we continue our Office of Human Capital Learn at Lunch series, where today we'll be focusing on staff diversity and building a workforce that our students need. Again, we are the Office of Human Capital, and we are mission-driven to recruit, develop, support, and retain the most effective, diverse staff. And for our session today, I just ask that you keep yourself on mute, keep your video on if possible, use the chat to ask any questions, and at the end of our session, complete the exit survey. I am Chris Miller, the Chief of Human Capital for the Rochester City School District. And in today's session, we have 3 learning goals and objectives. One is to recognize the importance of diversity recruitment in an urban school district like ours. Second, to analyze staff diversity data. And 3, to explore strategies for growing a diverse workforce. This is something that has been critically important for our district, and the benefits and positive impacts that diversity recruitment and retention has on our students, and the importance of mirroring our staff population with our student population. It's important that students can see themselves in the staff that are working with them, particularly classroom teachers. As a reminder, with our OHC Learn at Lunch series, we're working to ensure enhanced collaboration and communication, increase flexibility and adaptability, talent retention and career development, and efficiency and resource optimization of our efforts out of the Office of Human Capital. Our calendar for the year is very extensive. We started earlier this month, and we will continue through next November, a full year-long series of events and workshops. The full calendar is in the meeting invite. As well, the exit ticket for today is in the meeting invite. I want to start off just talking a little bit about the importance of professional learning and growth, and some of the efforts that we are employing to sharpen our edges and ensure that we are building our effort to engage in best practices. And what we do and what we're doing in the Rochester City School District is grounded in best practices and learning from other school districts that are grappling with the same challenges that we are grappling with. As some of you know, I was the Chief of Human Resources in the Syracuse City School District. And when I was there, it was critically important for me to find other people that were doing the similar work. And that wasn't really the suburban districts that surrounded me. And that's the same case here in Rochester. And so we created this network of Rochester, Buffalo, and Syracuse so that we could learn from each other, we could grapple with problems that we were facing, and just support each other. We all have lonely jobs, and so being able to connect with people who are doing similar work is really important. What we learned, though, was that Rochester, Buffalo, and Syracuse is just too regional, too New York based, and we're all struggling. And so we needed to look beyond just our 3 school districts. And so we were able to get some philanthropic support and connect with some other districts that you see here on the slide. And we were able to create a larger community of practice, including with some school districts that are the largest in the nation, largest in the world, like New York City, LA Unified, and Chicago Public Schools. Together, these districts educate almost 2 million students and have almost 310,000 staff. And so I've been fortunate to work with this group and the chiefs from each of these districts to engage and to share best practices and to support each other in the work that we're doing. And so what we're trying to do here in Rochester is connected to what others are doing across the country in this work. The need for greater diversity in our classrooms cannot be understated. Some really important facts for us to consider, that as a landscape across the nation, there simply are not enough teachers who are Black, Indigenous, people of color. And so we have work to do to ensure that we can grow talent and that we can find fits for staff who mirror our student population. And that could be country of origin, that could be language, that could be race and ethnicity. But all of those things are important, and it's important for students and families to see themselves reflected in the staff that we are putting in front of students. In Rochester, our student population is 91% Black, Indigenous people of color, and yet our teaching workforce is only 24% Black, Indigenous people of color. And so you see the disconnect in that our staff, or our teaching staff, does not mirror our student population. And so it's important that we find ways to be strategic and intentional to ensure diversity recruitment. When we compare our district here in Rochester to Buffalo and Syracuse, you see that we are similarly placed, and nationally, we're a bit ahead. But we don't rest there. We have a gap when we go back to the previous slide of 91% of our students are Black, Indigenous people of color, and our teachers are only 24% Black, Indigenous people of color. And so what I want to do today is help us understand what our staff population is comprised of. And to assist us with that, over the next series of slides, I'm going to go through rather quickly, but we're going to break out data for all of our staff and then look closer at staff based on type of job. And in the Rochester City School District, we break the type of jobs apart based on the union that staff are in. And so we have the Rochester Teachers Association, the Association of Supervisors and Administrators. We have the Board of Education non-teaching employees, which includes many of our operations staff, such as food service, transportation, safety and security, and custodial and clerical. And we also have the Rochester Association of Paraprofessionals, which largely includes our paraprofessionals and teaching assistants. So let's get right into the data slides. On this slide, what you see reflected, and I'll just take a moment to orient you to the slide, is that you see at the top of the slide the title. You'll also note that the number of staff reflected in each of these 3 years that we're looking at are also delineated at the top. There is also a key for race by color, such that you see that purple represents Black staff, dark green Hispanic staff, and white the lighter green, just as some examples. You'll note at the bottom of the slide that years are reflected: 2021, 2022, and 2023. And if you look at these data, you will note that in 2021, 38% of our staff were Black, Indigenous people of color. That increased to 45% in 2022 and increased again in 2023 to 49%. When we look at our hiring from July 1st forward, this slide shows us the number of staff and the breakdown by race and gender of the staff that have been hired since July 1st. We know we needed to make significant effort to hire staff to open the school year this year. It may be surprising, but we actually hired more staff this summer than we did last summer. You'll note in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide that we hired 570 staff from July 1st forward. Last summer, we hired 544. So the last couple of years have been significant relative to the demands and the needs that we've had as a district. You'll note that there are columns on this slide for gender, and that there are total and percent for each race category noted. You'll note that of the 570 staff that we hired, 60% or 343 of those staff represented Black, Indigenous people of color. You'll also notice that 72% of staff hired were female. To sum this up, and really, if we're going to change the diversity of our staff, we have to hire new staff, effective new staff, at higher rates than the current rate of Black, Indigenous people of color. And so when we look at our entire staff, we see that 49% are Black, Indigenous people of color. But since July 1st, we were hiring at a rate of 60%. So what that does is it shows a positive difference of 11 percentage points where we are hiring more diverse staff. So I took a little bit extra time to explain those slides, to orient you to them. I'm now going to take us a little bit faster as we break through each contract unit. And so on the next slide, we'll look specifically at our teachers, the Rochester Teachers Association, by race. And so as you look at this slide, you'll note that in 2021, 20% of our teachers were Black, Indigenous, people of color, that increased in 2022 to 25%, and in 2023, it is at 24%. Hiring since July 1st included 213 teachers, of which 37% were Black, Indigenous, people of color. That's a 10 percentage point difference from last summer, where we hired 27% of our teachers who were Black, Indigenous, people of color. So we've had some success in recruiting more staff who represent the diversity of our students. When we look at the difference here, we're at a rate of 24% Black, Indigenous, people of color. Our hiring rate was 37%, and that reflects a 13-point percentage difference in the positive. One of the key comparatives for school districts is obviously to look at teachers, but another key indicator is to look at principals specifically. Principals, besides students, are the single most important role in a school. And so we want to separate out and call out that we have put a focus on the diversity of our principals. And in 2021, 44% of our principals reflected the diversity of our students. That increased to 65% in 2022 and maintained at 65% in 2023. When we look at other positions within the ASAR unit, our supervisors and administrators, we know that we have civil service specific positions. And so this was an area where we have noted less diversity, and we have been intentional in looking at ways to increase the diversity of our ASAR civil service staff. You'll note in 2021, that 21% of our ASAR civil service staff were Black, Indigenous, people of color. That increased to 30% in 2022 and increased to 32% in 2023. Since July 1st, we only hired 29 people into ASAR civil service, of which 14 of them, or 48%, were Black, Indigenous, people of color. For all of ASAR now, again, all of ASAR is represented by 36% Black, Indigenous, people of color, and we were hiring at a rate of 48%, which reflects a 12 percentage point increase or difference. When we look at Bente, again, these are our operational staff, such as transportation, food service, clerical, custodial. On this slide, you will note that in 2021, 65% of our Bente staff were Black, Indigenous, people of color. That increased to 77% in 2022, and it is at 71% here in 2023. I do want to draw your attention, though, to the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, where you see the red bar. That red bar that indicates 6.6%. 6.6% of our staff did not indicate, or we do not have racial data on their composition. And we've noticed that some staff, when they are hired, are not sharing those data with us, but we're ever working to find ways to collect those data. So you can see some difference and a gap relative to that. Since July 1st, we hired 75 Bente staff, of which 64 were Black, Indigenous, people of color, which is a rate of 85%. And so when we look at Bente overall, 71% versus 85% hiring rate, that reflects a 14 percentage point difference. Looking specifically at RAP, our paraprofessionals and teaching assistants, you'll note that in 2021, 80% of our RAP staff were Black, Indigenous, people of color. That increased to 86% in 2022 and is at 83% here in 2023. Again, you'll note that that red bar in 2023 reflects a 4% unknown status. Since July 1st, we've hired 134 staff into RAP, of which 91% were Black, Indigenous, people of color. Overall, that reflects an 8% positive difference. So to sum up on this slide, this just sums up all of our staff by unit and shows the differences from the current rates versus our hiring rates, and shows the positive percentage point difference in the work that we are engaging in. On this slide, I'm raising attention to our own Office of Human Capital staff, the diversity of the staff, the people who are engaged in the process of helping to recruit and select and to partner with directors and principals and our hiring managers, the people that are engaged in this work. At the present time, 68% of our Office of Human Capital represents Black, Indigenous people of color. And I'd also note that of our staff, we have 9 members, or 26%, who are also bilingual. And that is important in our efforts to recruit and retain diversity. When we look at the executive cabinet, these are the people that work in concert with the superintendent and the Board of Education to lead the district in all of its efforts. And as you look at this slide, you will note that 53% of the superintendent's cabinet is representative of Black, Indigenous people of color. So now what I want to do is shift to talk a little bit about a specific strategy that we've been employing that people on this meeting are intimately aware of, and that's our teacher certification action plan candidates. Growing our educators educators is vital, and it's a vital initiative for the Rochester City School District. Growing our own, ensuring that we are able to fill the gaps that we have. We have significant gaps in staffing. There are national shortages. Young people are not going to college at similar rates to become teachers. There has been a significant drop off and a significant lag in teacher education preparation programs. And as an Office of Human Capital, we actually have to put our hands around people and bring them to the colleges to help them get their education. And we do that in a variety of ways by providing guidance and coaching and identifying paraprofessionals and teaching assistants that work within our district or are out in our community, and to help them and encourage them to work towards teaching certification. We support individuals with tuition reimbursement and guidance, certification fee assistance, and just generalized supports, because we have to actually grow our own workforce. We have to help colleges find students to become teachers. It used to be that our colleges and universities were providing an abundance of educators to meet our demands, and that's unfortunately no longer the case. And so we as a school district have had to shift to actually build our own workforce, which calls on us to do things dramatically different than we may have had to do 5 years ago or 10 years ago. As I mentioned, this is vitally important that we're engaged in this work. And it's not only important in terms of cultivating local talent, but it helps us by focusing on this way. It helps us to foster cultural relevancy and actively promote diversity recruitment. And so this initiative of the teacher certification action plans addresses not only our staffing challenges and our staffing shortages, but it also enhances our long-term teacher retention efforts, because the folks that we are hiring through this process are well invested and connected to our community. Many of them graduated from our schools. They've lived their entire lives in the Rochester City School District. They have families here. They have students in our schools. They are connected, and so they are more likely to stay and to remain. More than that, these efforts build trust with our community and with our diverse population, because we're helping to uplift people in our own community. More than that, investing in the growth of our local community not only ensures a sustainable pipeline to meet our hiring challenges, but it also has a positive economic and social impact on our community, in part because we're helping to uplift people who may already be working in the district, helping them to become teachers, which means a greater income, better benefits and compensation, and all of those things help uplift our community. When you look at this slide, we had 266 teachers that have been hired in the past 2 years through our teacher certification action plan efforts. We've lost 19 of them. 19 out of 266 is a 7% group. That is a phenomenal retention effort at this point. And we're going to continue to monitor the teachers that have been hired for this program to keep an eye on retention rates through this. But that is well above efforts of other school districts to maintain staff and to build staff. Of the 247 teachers that remain in this program, 62%, or 152 of them, are Black, Indigenous teachers of color. This is a diversity recruitment initiative, and one that also has retention built into it. So going back, just to remind us, right, 24% of our teaching staff are Black, Indigenous people of color. And through this program, we've hired at a rate of 62%, which is a 38% point difference. So where are these folks? How are they doing? They're doing well. Some of you know that 3 of our teachers hired last year as teachers on certification action plans were actually identified as teachers of the year through the CIT program, our career and teaching program. So they have been honored by their colleagues for being excellent in the classroom. So that's certainly a testament. It's also important to note that while some of these individuals may not be certified in New York State, that doesn't mean that they're inexperienced as teachers. We have hired from charter schools where certification may not be required. We've hired from places like Puerto Rico. We've hired from other nations such as Cuba and Venezuela, and we're working with individuals from those places to help them transition into our state and into our school district and to get the certification. They may be certified where they came from. We're just trying to help them through the hoops. And so when you look at this slide, you'll note that in 2022, 2023, we did hire 167 new teachers that were not certified who had specific action plans. 68 of them are already certified. We expect 50 more of them to be certified this month. We are getting in dribs and drabs updates from those candidates and from the state education department. They're becoming certified. And in fact, 5 new people have been certified since I put this slide into this deck. So the certifications are coming in. We anticipate another 32 to be certified by June. And this is where you start to see some drop off. On the next slide, you'll see that we hired 97 new teachers who were not certified and who were placed on teacher certification action plans. Even though they were hired just for this year, we've already have 19 of them who were already certified. Another 5 came in the last day who now have certification. And so we're going to see more of them certified this month, more in June, and then the remaining 9 later in 2025. The New York State Education Department was with us last week, the bilingual education office specifically, and we were able to speak to them last week about the data that you're seeing on this slide and to advocate and lobby for some changes in the state education department's processes and systems to better meet the needs of teachers in this area. And so in 2022-23, we did hire 24 bilingual teachers through this program. 5 of them are already certified, and you can see where the others will be certified. Through our lobbying efforts, we were actually able to discuss certification challenges for individuals who are bilingual, and we were able to help the state change its policy so that now they are offering extended time on state certification tests for bilingual candidates who request that extended time. They'll actually receive time and a half. That's an important hurdle that has been removed and one that will help more of our bilingual educators earn their certification. The other thing that has been a significant challenge for us, I mentioned earlier that we are hiring teachers, experienced teachers from other places such as Cuba or Venezuela. And one of the things that is a hurdle for those individuals is interpreting the transcripts that they have from the colleges and universities that they graduated from. One, they need to be interpreted for credit understanding, but also the language and information that is on those transcripts. And this has been something that has been a challenge both for colleges that are maybe enrolling these individuals, but also for the state education department. And so we're working with colleges, we're working with the state education department to make that process more supportive of these candidates so that they can become certified with greater ease and less barriers. On this slide, you'll note that in 23-24, we did hire 23 bilingual teachers through certification action plans, and you can see where they are relative to becoming certified. One of the things, just to give you some insight into what a teacher certification action plan is, they are individually developed. And so we have a member on our team, our Director of Staff and Educator Effectiveness, Kara Reddy-Vetter, who is engaging in this work and supporting these candidates. She works with each to develop a personalized plan and to help them with timelines, goals, and to put her hands around them and support them in this effort. The other thing that we've done is worked very closely with colleges and universities. And remarkably, when you look at the right side of this slide, you see the partnerships that we've created just since the fall of 2022 to realize memorandum of agreements with these colleges and universities, to find touch points and connections that we can connect our staff with individuals at these colleges and universities. We've negotiated or been able to realize tuition discounts anywhere from 10 to 25%, depending on the university. We've worked with the colleges and universities to remove barriers for people who need to work during the day to support their livelihood so that they can find other ways to do their student teaching requirements so that they don't have to stop working and earning an income and do student teaching, that there are other more creative ways that they can student teach while they work for us as a teacher through teacher residency programs. We've also worked with them to develop alternative pathways to becoming a teacher and creating opportunities for online learning. The other thing that I previously mentioned was working with colleges and universities to make the whole transcript or review of foreign credentials easier. And so with each of these colleges and universities, we've created partnerships and touch points, and our staff and educator effectiveness team with Kara Reddy-Vetter have really been uplifting much of this work. And so we're really proud of those efforts and the engagement that we're working in. And so with that, I am going to conclude our presentation for today. I'd ask you to go into the meeting invite and complete the exit ticket so that we can get some feedback. But in our next session, we'll be going a little bit deeper into diversity, equity, inclusion, and why that's so important in the Rochester City School District. So I thank you for your time today, and we'll see you soon.